Happy holidays, everybody. Welcome to the Fearless Road Podcast, episode 10, the final episode in our premiere season. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I've made it this far. This episode is with the amazing Cristal Cook. She's a therapist and an author and specializes in children's therapy and mental health, especially talking about fear. With two of her books, Hope is a Butterfly and Braveheart Gracie and the Powerless Vacuum Monster, out this past fall and available pretty much everywhere. This is I think this is one of the first recordings that I did this past summer, which you'll probably notice it's a bit raw in some places, but that's okay. Still getting my legs underneath me, still figuring this thing out, this platform, how to operate everything. But man, it's tricky, when you take on something so much bigger than you and you really want to step fully into it. Pardon me, my eyes are watering. You can be met with a lot of obstacles along the way as entrepreneurs. And by the way, I don't take that term lightly. I think the term entrepreneur is something that is still being defined, and it's being defined by those of us down here in the trenches, those of us in the valleys making our way. And it's not just because you get there and you're successful that you're an entrepreneur. It's the journey, man. It's the road, the fearless road that we all have to take to get there. And in this episode, we talk a lot about fear from a bit more of a therapeutic and psychological standpoint. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And interestingly enough, probably one of the shortest ones I've done. I know you guys have stuck with me, and I talk a lot, and I get very excited and enthusiastic with my guests about these topics. I really kind of want to shorten this stuff down. I promise you in 2024, we will be providing you with some more concise and, bite-sized chunks of these things. I'll edit them down and get them to like maybe 30 minutes, maybe. And I'll be doing some snippets. I figured out some new software I can get some snippets out. So that'll be helpful. Look for those in 2024. And, oh, by the way, the event that's coming up in 2024, February 16th of 2024, the Leadership Navigator 2024 seminar. It's an entrepreneurship seminar celebrating women in entrepreneurship, leadership, executives, and we talk about some pretty incredible stuff coming up in 2024. It's all the things that are going to be on your plate and in the front of your mind. So check it out. Go to our Facebook page, go to our YouTube channel, go to my website, michaeldevue.com, Michael Devue Jr., .com, or The Fearless Road. You'll find information there and all those resources that lead you to registration, which opens pretty soon. Other than that, man, have a wonderful holiday season. Have an incredible time with your friends and your family. Celebrate being an entrepreneur. Celebrate being fearless this entire season. Celebrate all the things you've done, the small steps to get up to the top of the mountain of success you've been chasing. That idea in your head that you had a long time ago to become something, to do something, to have something greater than what it was you were doing, having, or being right now is coming to fruition, and you are taking the steps, and you are being successful, and you are being fearless. And we know you. We know that. We recognize that. We see that. So happy holidays. You're a gift to all of us here at the Fearless Road Podcast for sticking with us, for supporting us. That is the gift of the season for me. And I'm going to see you in 2024. I'm so excited. Okay, have a fantastic holiday season. Enjoy this episode. And remember, stay fearless. Bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fearless Road Podcast. I am joined in studio today with Cristal Cook, an amazing woman who is doing some fearless work in the world of children's books and fear, but specifically in helping individuals deal with and overcome some of their fears and some of their phobias and some of their issues. Cristal Cook, welcome to the Fearless Road Podcast.
Do you want me to just step in?
Oh, sure. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you were wanting something specific.
That didn't sound like a question, did it? So let's grab a little background. Cristal, share with us and the audience a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Yeah. And the older you get, the longer your story is, isn't it? So I guess I've always had a bit of an adventure spirit. And we've talked a little bit in the past about a personality exams and our personality traits. And one of mine is very high on openness. And so because of that, I like a lot of adventure. I like a lot of change. And that has been reflective in my life. And as a child, I had a lot of different things I wanted to do when I grew up. I wanted to be a clown. I wanted to be a rodeo clown, then a circus clown. And then I decided I wanted to be a private detective and solve murders. And then I wanted to work on a cruise ship. And I even opened my own detective agency when I was like 7 and 8 years old.
So Nancy Drew.
And I love Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
And granted, I did my homework.
Yeah.
I read Nancy Drew and Trixie Belden and Encyclopedia Brown, and I watched Scooby-Doo. So I had all the knowledge. And as I got older, I think my mom thought, oh, dear Lord, what are we going to do with this kid? And so she really encouraged me to do something, I guess, sensible. And really highly encouraged me to become an accountant. Well, I did become an accountant.
Doesn't seem as ambitious as all the other dreams that you had, but...
Right. And not as exciting, right? And accounting is a great career. I'm glad I have that knowledge and the background, but to me, it was drudgery. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like numbers. Maybe I can get another cup of coffee. It was not a good fit. And I decided to return to my childhood roots and found my way in the FBI as an agent. And that was great. It was a lot of adventure. I met a lot of amazing people and realized, this isn't really my fit either. Arresting bad guys and doing investigations and dealing with a lot of bureaucracy, it just didn't fuel my soul. And as life does, it gives you tragedies and heartbreak. And, sometimes those are the things that, just really shakes up your world. And I reflected on my life and I thought, gosh, if I die tomorrow, is this what I want? So I decided, no, I wanted something different. And I left the FBI and decided to pursue a career in social work. So I went back to school, got a master's in clinical social work, and have been on this path since then. And it is still filled with adventure. I've been in this field now for 20 years, and I've traveled all over the world and been able to work doing that. And so worked a lot with teenagers and kids and families. And for 9 years, I lived full-time overseas, working with the military and the families, and managed a program for the last 2 years of that and moved back to the States. And I've been writing children's books and doing private practice and some contract work and really wanting to begin talking to teens, about self-limiting beliefs and fear. And a lot of the books, my children's book series is all on social emotional learning, which includes uncomfortable feelings, relationships, conflict, basically what we used to always call life skills. And so I developed a book for kids to have a fun book filled with adventure that then they could learn these skills in a way that wasn't really like preachy, like don't hit Joey. Well, that doesn't really work, right?
Because I said so.
And so like if you, yeah, right? Because I said so. Like, well, I'm going to really hit Joey now. And so the way that you work with that is for a child to care about Joey. And if we care about Joey and we know Joey and we're attached to Joey, well, maybe we're not going to.
Well, Mr. Rogers has a quote that he, gives that once you know someone's story, it's hard to hate someone once you know their story, or it's easier to love them once you know their story. And I love that about Mr. Rogers. He's such a gentle, compassionate soul. But I think most of us, even in this world of connectivity where supposedly we're so connected, I think we're more distant and separate than we've ever been. And I think it's being reflected in the children as they come up and see access does not necessarily mean connection, and teaching them the art of connecting and being familiar with and getting to know somebody so that they're not unfamiliar. They don't have to be afraid, and they don't have to mistreat that individual based on assumptions that they're making, right? Because for kids, especially who are great storytellers, their little minds are going to fill in all these little gaps about things they don't know. And if we're not there guiding them, then I would imagine that their brains are probably filling it in with all sorts of well, probably wonderful and crazy things, but also some scary stuff too.
Absolutely. And yeah, I love Mr. Rogers, and that's what he did. That's what I wanted to do with my children's books, is in a sense like Mr. Rogers. Like, he taught, like, every one of his episodes was a pretty major life lesson, and some very deep and difficult. He did it in a way that was light and fun and very magnetic. And that's when they stick, right? Like, all of us in this age group, we still talk about Mr. Rogers. You and I could sing the Mr. Rogers tune and take off our outside sweater and hang it up and put on our inside sweater and take off our outside shoes. Like, those things stick in your brain.
Well, just the opening song, the "Who Are the People in Your Neighborhood," begs the question, do you know your neighbors? Like, do we know the people around us? Have we spent the time to get to know them? And that very act in and of itself starts to bridge the gap between the unknown and what is fearful, and the known and what is familiar, right? And so as people who are seeking opportunities to improve our fearlessness, that which is unknown always remains sort of outside that little bubble where fear can play, right? Fear has its way with it in our minds and our spirits and other places, especially with little kids who don't know what to expect and aren't prepared. They could place so many different things outside that bubble. But when Mr. Rogers says, who are the people in your neighborhood, he's inviting people in. He's asking you to invite people in. And I think that's an important lesson, not only for kids, but also for us adults, that we probably should be wondering,
Yeah, and you said something that I think you really hit it pretty well. It's like, right now we're so much more disconnected, and isn't it counterintuitive when we have the internet?
Yes.
And I can have a legitimate friendship with someone thousands of miles away and never meet them, and that friendship could be very real, and authentic. And at the same time, I could be trying to engage with someone, and they're sitting across from me on their phone, and there's a lack of connection with the person sitting 2 feet in front of you.
Yes.
And what I found working with teens over the last, I would say, few years, and this has been consistent whether I was in the US or Italy or Germany, Army, Air Force, is they would come to me and tell me about this very intense conversation with their significant other or their best friend. And it would end up going down a breakup. And I would, oh my goodness, what was that person's facial expression like? What did they say? Did they cry? It's like, I don't know. It was through texting. But well, wait a minute. You had this entire conversation through text. Like, yes. And they would say it is more comfortable for me to text someone than for me to talk to them face to face. And in that, you have that, right? That lack of connection, that lack of knowing, because we can say some pretty mean things on the phone, texting, than we would never say to someone looking at them in the eye.
Well, that speaks to self-regulation. I find it fascinating that people today, they're not kids anymore, I guess, now that phones have been out for the better part of 2 decades, that they can default to the easiest, most convenient and comfortable version of communicating, which eliminates personal responsibility. Or at least it reduces it to a certain degree. And when you and I were growing up, we didn't have phones. We didn't have cell phones. If you had to speak to somebody, break up with somebody, talk to somebody, you had to do it face to face, or you had to do it in a letter that you wrote, or on the landline, which typically you were, talking to your besties and stuff all the time. But we had to be accountable for our words. And that meant action behind them. That meant you had to step to the person, speak to the person, and address them specifically. If you had an issue specifically with them, you couldn't do it in a text, you couldn't do it in an email, you couldn't be flippant and nonplussed about it. You had to take it seriously, and that meant you had to choose your words carefully. You had to know what you were going to say and why you were going to say it, and you could not be accountable. Like, you had to be held accountable because you were doing it in person. And I think this level of accountability seems to have just sort of faded with these two next generations who don't have the same, what's the word? We weren't forced to do it. We just didn't have any other options, right? We didn't have the other option of bowing out. In fact, I mean, maybe your mom was similar as my mom. If I had a problem with somebody and I was avoiding it, she would make me get them on the phone or directly approach them. And there was no choice. It was like, you seem to have a problem. You need to call them up or bring them over right now. I'll call their parents and have them come over and we can have a talk.
Right.
You know, who does that these days?
Yeah. I mean, we were forced to have social skills.
Yeah.
And
even if they were bad ones, we were forced to have them and then practice.
And then practice, right? Because that's what helps you develop good social skills is practice. And I was an incredibly shy child. And if I would have grown up in this era, I probably would have been one of those children who escaped into my phone because it's safe. Yes. And I see that with one of my friends and her daughters. One in particular is so incredibly shy, but when I'm around her and I'm trying to engage in conversation, this is the protective. It's the protective barrier, because as long as she's got that, then she doesn't have to communicate.
But don't you think that this sense of safety behind the phone or in the phone or through texting is a false sense of security? And the reason why I say that is because if they lack the skill set to approach an individual actively, if they lack the ability to communicate one-on-one with someone because they've spent so many years hiding behind a text or a phone or their Facebook or their Instagram, that's not real safety. That's actually losing the ability to interact with the world. You are now truncating, you are now stunting your social growth by defaulting to this method.
And losing potential friendships and relationships.
Sure, yes. Or increasing the fear factor, because now the distance between you and an actual interaction gets greater and greater and greater. So the idea of having to do it becomes even more fearful when you have to do it in person.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you.
So what would you say, if you have one, do you have an origin story of fear? Like where your fear might have started? What are some of your biggest fears that you've dealt with in your life? Joining the FBI must have been huge. I mean, that's no small undertaking.
You know, it's interesting because the things that you think would scare me don't. You know, I can go into fight mode. Like, for instance, I had a really scary situation where in the nighttime, I was in the shower and I just, where something, that the hair rises on the back of your neck and I'm like, something's off. Like there could be how could there be something off? I live in this Italian villa alone. I'm on the second floor facing the what is it called? The yard. There's a word for it in Italy. And I'm on the second floor. Like, how could there be anything awry? But I knew something. There was a man outside of my window that had walked on these roof for a while to get to my window, and I went into full on fight. I mean, I can't say that I wasn't scared, but I went into full on fight mode. I opened that window. Thank goodness he's faster than me. I opened the window. I don't know what I was going to do. Punch him in the throat. I don't know.
Well.
But, I was scared, but I was more angry than scared. I was, I was mad at a hornet.
Yeah.
Now, I was on the train once. This has happened more than once, but I'm going to give you this one example. I'm in Germany with a friend, and we're going to another cute little town, and there was a group of guys close in my age. Come on. We're not talking about 20-somethings. We're talking about, 40-somethings. They get on the train, and really nice-looking guys. Nice, funny. One in particular I find, very handsome. He sits across from me and starts talking to me. Petrified because this guy was so handsome and so funny.
You mean now you're
so
scared?
Interesting. Right now I'm scared, right?
You're safe, you're on a train, you're with your friends, and all of a sudden you freeze up.
Freeze up.
Yeah.
Not only do I freeze up, but my whole neck breaks out in like that blotchy red stuff. And I'm like, nothing will come out. And
you were like Marsha Brady
silly?
When she's like scratching.
I don't know. And so there was no danger, but it was a total irrational fear.
Yes.
Now, interestingly enough, when he was sitting to the side of me and I wasn't looking at him and I couldn't be so transfixed on how handsome he was, I could actually have somewhat of a conversation. But, so I don't know, the things that scare me It doesn't even make sense. I mean, I don't know what my fear is. I guess
But don't you think that's
get
typical, though?
nervous.
I mean, for most of us, what scares us, or I should say, and I don't like the word scare because to me, scare is like scary movie. Someone jumped out and scared you. And I feel like I've talked to you about this before, too, which is why we apply the word fear to so many different things that necessarily may not fit the definition of fear. Anxiety-ridden,
Right.
Paranoia is so different. You know what I mean? That's a whole different category. Any phobias that you have,
Mhm.
very specific clinical type things. Whereas these, and they are irrational because almost all of them have to do with the future. I think you mentioned this before, which was the acronym for fear, which is future events.
False evidence appearing
False
real.
evidence appearing real. I'm going to rewrite. One day I'll put it down properly.
Yeah.
False evidence appearing real. Ladies and gentlemen, remember that because I just keep forgetting it. False evidence appearing real. And we are projecting, right, our worries, doubts, fears onto something in the future that hasn't even happened yet, right? It's not even real. It hasn't even actualized. But we're placing it out in
Right.
front of us. And to me, there's nothing more irrational than that. There's nothing different than you dreaming. If I dream about something in the future that's amazing and big and beautiful, then I'm also fearful that it's tragic and going to go bad. Like we are producing those responses to something that's out in front of us because we either A, want something so badly we want to chase after it, or B, are fearful of losing it if we mess up, right, and do something wrong. But neither one of those are true yet. So why does the brain do this?
I don't know. Isn't it funny? You know,
Well, it's
our brains were developed, way back.
And we have so much evidence behind us to support taking chances on ourselves. I mean, it started when we were walking and bruising our knee or riding a bicycle, going on a first date or anything else like that. We survived these things. We took chances on ourselves. We didn't die. They weren't terrible.
Right.
Nothing harmful and terrible happened. Difficult, embarrassing maybe, but nothing terrible. So why do we continue to, why does our brain continue to place this stuff out in front of us?
Well, our brains are hardwired to protect us. And our brains don't know the difference between life and death fear, life and death situation versus not life and death. It just goes by like, what if? It goes by this is, like this is scary. Yeah. For instance, I'm going to take an exam. I'm going to take the exam and this is scary. Our brains don't understand that it's not life or death.
So the amygdala that's releasing these endorphins or these hormones or whatever, these chemicals, if you will, into our bodies, it's the same chemical regardless of the type of fear?
Yeah, regardless of the type of fear. Yeah.
So it's up to us to sort of filter this and make sense of it?
It's up to us to use the frontal part of our brain, the frontal lobe, to say, okay, wait a minute. Okay, Cristal, wait a minute. Take a deep breath. This is a nice person sitting on the train with you. You may never see him again. Just take and taking a deep breath resets everything, right? Because when we get panicky, whether we're panicking because life or death, or we're panicking because we're nervous about getting in front of the class and giving a presentation, or talking to a handsome guy, or getting ready to take an exam, we go into our sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. And that's why we get stomach aches. That's why we start breathing heavy and we start sweating. And we don't have access to the frontal part of your brain, our frontal lobe.
You mean it's like shut off temporarily or just...
It goes to sleep. That's why when people have anxiety, test anxiety, they fail the test or they don't do well because that part of their brain they can't recall. Like kind of like with me and the guys, like, what is my name? I don't even know what my name is. So that, because if you think about it, way back when we, thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, we weren't faced with exams. We were faced with warring tribes, animals that could kill us, just basic getting our needs met. And so if we're, going on a hunt and a saber-toothed tiger is going to chase after us and snack on us, we don't need to think. We don't need to think about an algebraic equation. We just need to put all of our react. And so everything, all of the energy in our brain goes back to the reptilian part of our brain, fight, flight, or freeze. And our stomach shuts down because we do not need to digest that sandwich. We need all the blood to go to our big muscle groups, which is our arms and our legs. and everything to go to our lungs, and we need our eyesight, so our eyes dilate, and we need a good sense of smell, and we just need to be able to run.
How do you? Sorry to interrupt. How do you? Okay, so one of the things that I find interesting, that when a situation occurs, car accident, big panicky thing that most people would freak out about, I'm usually the one that's super calm. Like everything just, I have this warmth that comes over me. I can think very clearly, and I'm the one that's organizing, organizing the CPR, making sure people get what they need done. I just have this. What's the difference for those of us who react that way under those kind of stressful situations, as opposed to other individuals who like freak out and can't?
Right. And that's part of your temperament. And that came out very clearly in your Neo personality assessment.
So for folks out there who don't know, I took this Neo personality test that Cristal sent me, and we are going to look at those results on the show today that I haven't even seen yet. So I'm very excited to see about that. But
yeah. So just to real quick to go back. So when we are in that panicky mode, that sympathetic nervous system, and it's talking to the cute guy on the train or getting ready to take an exam, taking a deep breath helps us switch back to the parasympathetic nervous system. Yes. It keeps us from panicking. So in answer to your question, all of us have a temperament, right? Some people are really funny. Some people tend towards depression. Some people always are optimistic. Some people like to be around a lot of people. Other people like to be alone. So there's our basic baseline temperament, right? And so people who work in an ER are like you. They don't get rattled too much. Other people, when an acute situation like that arises, they go to panic. Maybe they just freeze. And that's part of their temperament. Now they can learn strategies to learn how to calm down when things get really stressful, but their baseline is always going to be more panicky. Whereas yours in an acute situation like that, you stay calm, cool, and collected. Everybody's different.
So before we go on to those results or whatever, what are some of this? I mean, you just mentioned one, which is count back from, I'm assuming from 10, you count down. What are a couple other strategies? If you give the top 3 strategies, if you were to provide them, that people could use when they're in a situation where they feel like that's coming up?
Definitely breathe deep. Just take a minute and just slow it down. Take a deep breath, slow it down, and then self-talk. It's like, I'm okay. This is okay. I know. For instance, I'm going to give you an example on the exam. Taking the deep breath. I studied this. I know this material. It's okay.
Why does it sound like my mom's talking to me when you do that?
Maybe your mom helped calm you down, right?
Well, they did. I mean, our moms, when we got panicky as kids, they sit on calm and soothe us, right? They use that soothing voice that calms you down. And is that what that self-talk is for us, that we should be using that soothing self-talk?
And another thing, this is a great little thing, is to do this. Like if you've seen sometimes kids who are on this, they used to, I think that the terms have changed. I've been overseas for so long, but I think it used to be called autistic, but now I think maybe the terms have changed. Maybe it's still autism, but they would call it flapping. And a lot of times they'll roll up and down and flap. Well, somehow they know inherently that when the lateral hemispheres of their body is stimulating a rhythmic motion, it's calming. So you can do that. You can do it like, you don't have to, flap and, be really conspicuous about it. You can just kind of go like this or tap your legs. But it's like,
or I always end up doing this. I rub my arms.
If that helps.
I catch myself rubbing my arms in this,
But but anything
holding myself
in
up
a rhythmic motion back and forth, and you just take a deep breath. It's okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay.
Okay,
and
so
that's calming.
Take a deep breath. That's like count back from 10. 2, self-soothe talking, and a physical gesture of some kind that helps bring rhythm and like a soothing rhythm back into your moment.
And it can be like just even tapping right knee, left knee, right knee, left knee, right knee, left knee. And no one even sees it. You're just doing it.
Is that like the method is that similar to the method that if you sing a song, you have a thought, or your monkey mind, as I call it, the monkey mind or whatever, chattering and going around, but it can't work if you start singing a song. So you just start singing, and then that way it gets.
I mean, that's going in your brain. This is more somatic. It's a somatic
Yes.
thing.
Okay.
That we do a lot
Okay.
with trauma work. It's just somatic. And what works better is if you practice all of these things beforehand. So if you have a practice of
Sure.
prayer or meditation.
Certainly don't want to wait till the moment of chaos to like
to use your skills.
Where's my notes?
I know, right?
What am I
Like,
supposed to do?
right. Yeah, for sure. But deep breathing is so helpful. You breathe in for 3, hold it,
Staying
breathe
alive.
out.
Staying
Right?
alive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so even just practicing beforehand, and like if you have anxiety, test anxiety, before the exam, picture yourself doing really well. Picture yourself going into the exam and being calm and knowing the answers. And so it's like kind of like what you said, like really visualizing the future happening in a positive way. And practicing your deep breathing and doing a yoga practice, exercising, all of those things beforehand will keep you in your moment. It'll help keep you. You may still be nervous, but you're not going to be up here. You're going to be down here, more manageable.
One of the things that I think, and maybe this is just me observing people, the nervous Nellies, I call them nervous Nellies, the people that's constantly worrying and sort of anxious about certain things or whatever. But I said it was interesting that I'd realized recently they are actually practicing the art of worry because they're constantly engaging with that side of themselves. Whereas those of us who this self-soothing talk, this positive envisioning the future with a positive outcome, how many of us actually practice that daily as opposed to our brains, which practice that art of chatter and self-negative talk that's always going on? Why does that always happen as opposed to the opposite? Why isn't our brain talking to us positively all the time?
It's a good question. I think that could, probably anthropologists would have more knowledge on that.
Well, we got to get them on the show. Yeah. Do we have a caller call in?
I know, right? It's like right now, and honestly, we have got so much noise in our world right now, right? And I think back, even when our parents or grandparents were growing up, they were outside, they were working, they physically were working, they were, so they're exercising, they ate natural food. And we have got the internet and we've got phones and we've got texting and we've got so much noise going on right now that I think it's harder to quiet things down because there's noise everywhere.
That's like when we were, I think, I guess I would speak for you and I, but our generation and stuff, if we were latchkey kids or not even latchkey kids, we didn't even have a key because things were so
Wait, no one locked the door.
No one locked the door. Like you came from school and you went through the back door. Maybe you locked the front door, but the back door was always open.
The back door was always open.
But we didn't veg out on our iPads or our phones. We got home, ate a snack or whatever, and then went out to play. We engaged with the physical world and our imagination because that's what was left to us in order to entertain ourselves. And I'm curious about the development of kids these days, if there's any studies or anything like that are being done, the difference between the development of a child's brain in this current environment as opposed to ours that had such activities.
Absolutely. I think there's got to be a lot, there's a lot more ADHD now than there was when we were kids.
True. Yes, that's true.
And like you said, like when we were kids, we were outside. So if we were riding our bike and jumping and made jumps, we had to focus, right? Or we were going to wreck our bikes and get really hurt. And there was no grown-ups around to help us if we got hurt, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't really want to get hurt. So we paid attention and we were mindful and we were focused. And our brains weren't thinking about, this video game and that and this and that and the other. We were really present.
We were in the moment.
And we were in the moment. And so I think when people grew up being present in the moment, it is easier for us to then go back to that. And then not everybody thinks. There are some people who struggle with that worry, the constant worry.
Constantly.
But that now kids, it's like it's hard for them to slow down and just be present.
Yeah, to sit still and be in the moment, like without
give me my phone,
to be distracted.
Or I want to play a video game. I need to have a text.
I had a friend of mine that came up to visit here at the ranch with her son recently, and he's 11 or 12. And we were like, put the phone down, put your tablet down. We're going out into nature. We're actually going to go walk on the property on this 50 acres of, Yes. He actually was like kind of upset about the idea. It was like, just put it down and walk with us. What are we going to do? We're going to walk and talk. We're going to visit nature. What else? what else do you need? I mean, nature around you is so
I
beautiful.
know.
There's so much to see and, interact with and engage with and be present with in this moment than your phone. And it was this weird disconnect that I could see was like, wow, we are
Right.
vastly different generations of people
I
who
know.
experience life. Okay, so
Absolutely. So different. Yeah.
and peanut butter allergies. I mean, that's got to be a thing. Like that didn't happen when I was growing up. Everybody had peanut butter.
You know what? No, yeah, exactly. That was our, our mainstay, right? We didn't have a lot of allergies. So that is interesting, how many allergies there are. But I know when I was working with teens, a lot of them run high on anxiety right now. And that's one of my theories is that there's just so much going on. But those kiddos, the one way that they could slow their brain down is if they could be forced to immerse in something that took 100% of their mind, which was acting. So I would have kids that were high anxiety, but they could act in a drama and have zero anxiety. But it's because they were 100% present in that moment when they were acting.
Wow. That's interesting because role playing, pretending, something naturally that comes to kids all the time. But you wouldn't think that the act of doing it provided them with some sense of calmness and understanding and control for themselves.
Because they were present in the moment, because they were getting into character.
Yeah.
100% present in the moment. Yeah.
So before we move on to like Gracie and the dog, which is Gracie's one of the characters in her books, I have this quote that she says in one of the books. But do you want to like talk about the book or do you want to talk about my results? Like, where do we want to go with this right now? Do we want to like save my results till later? Or do we want to
we can save your results. We can do the book because you brought it up.
So with my own eyes, I've seen it eating the doggy treats and bones and toys that I meticulously buried between the couch cushions. If it can eat doggy bones, it can eat dogs and Princess Penelope too. So I love this moment for those of you who don't know. Gracie, the dog, is interacting with the vacuum. The monster is the vacuum. And everybody knows how our pets respond fearlessly to these irrational fears, to this vacuum that's making all this noise. But what struck me about this comment that Gracie makes about the vacuum is our ability, even as kids, to project potential harm from an assumed set of criteria that we think we already know, right? If the vacuum can suck up all these things out of the couch, what do you think it can do to me? And immediately we attach all this fear to it. Is that something that kids do? You find kids do a lot?
I think as humans we do, don't we? I mean, fear was meant to be a life-saving emotion for us. And so our brains were hardwired to, look for fear. Because if we look for fear, and then if we're people we're going to go back in time. Those of us who were hardwired for fear, who ran high on anxiety, were the ones that survived. Because people like you, quite honestly, Michael, you would have been eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, maybe when you were less than a year old. I would have stuck
my head in it. You're like, check it out.
Hello, do you want to be my friend, right?
You're so cute. Could have pet you.
So people who
you're probably right.
were fearful lived,
They were the...
Yeah, because it saved our lives, right? And so part of that is how safe is this? And we go through a very fast process of if it can do A, B, C, D, and E, we fill in the blanks, like you said.
Yes.
And that, can be life-saving. At the same time, it can create irrational fears and not fill in the blanks correctly. And so now that we are more advanced and we don't have saber-toothed tigers looking around every corner, we can say, and it can eat doggy treats and my toys. Can it really eat me? Have I seen it eat an animal?
Right.
Let me slow down a minute, And so that's what Charlie is trying to teach Gracie is get more information first and not fill in the blanks, like you said. Like,
so there's
we all
a great
do, right?
tip, right? Besides taking a 10-second breathing and using self-soothing, and maybe just ask the question, I forgot what you just literally just flew out of my head when he was telling Gracie to check the information that you have, right? Let's go back over this. Can this really harm you? Is that really the outcome? Are you projecting something that is not real? Or are you assuming an outcome that isn't real based on where you're currently sitting in a place of fear? Or are you sitting in a place of positive? Like,
Exactly.
that's a good tip
And,
as well.
and get to a safe place to do that, right? Because, if there is, someone walking down the street and, gosh, I just saw him punch that woman. Am I safe? I probably would not want to be around, but I would, try to get to a phone, call 911, but I would also put myself in a place where I'm safe and then get more information. Maybe he didn't really punch a woman. Maybe they're filming a movie.
Right.
And it was fake, right?
Right.
So there could be other explanations. But the one thing that I did want the kids to get is get into a safe place, then get more information.
And how do we identify a safe place? If we're the parents of kids and we know that little Johnny and Gracie and what have you, they have these fears, and that's okay. It's natural for them to do so. How do we assign a safe space? Is that something that you do together as a parent and a child, and you choose some place that feels good for both of you or for the child?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. A safe place to me is distancing yourself from the presumed danger. Look, so if, say for instance with Gracie, she was able to run out of the doggy door and she's outside and she's able to watch the vacuum monster from outside. And so she's safe from the vacuum monster. So then from that vantage point, then she could look and see, is this safe? If you're a child and something scary happens and you can find a trusted adult, and that adult can keep you safe until you can gather more information. Now, the other thing too is, sadly, as a child, not all adults are safe.
True. That is true.
Not all trusted adults are safe, right? And so it's up for the child to then really decide who in my life is safe. Because, I've worked with kids, that we want to think of, okay, the person that's reading this book to the child is a well-adjusted family that love their kids and keeps them safe. And the truth of the matter is that there are some kids that will read my book and not have an adult that keeps them safe, that maybe the adult is the one that hurts them, And so it's for the child to define, where am I safe? Where can I
to help
be
them
hurt?
choose.
Mm-hmm. And it would be great if the parent can choose. Yes, if the parent can choose, and they can have that conversation with them, or a teacher. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever the situation is, where can you go that's safe? For instance, if a child grows up in a very volatile home where mom and dad are beating each other up, where can that child be safe? Maybe in the bedroom behind the closet door, where they're not seen and they're quiet, right? So being away from the perceived danger.
That would
be the first step.
Space where these things grow. I mean, that's the fertile soil of our fears as children, when what looks safe and appears safe to us may not be the same for other people, right? And the way that we develop that relationship with safety, and how we begin to define safety based on the experiences that we have from our own interpersonal family relationships, our neighborhood relationships, and things like that. I can imagine that the psyche of a child developing in a set of circumstances where safety is not defined the way that, I suppose, if you want to call it normal, those of us who could call normal safety wouldn't be able to perceive those things the same way that we do because of the circumstances they grew up in.
Absolutely. Now, when I'm a therapist, I can have those conversations with the children and help them figure out what's safe. But if I'm not a therapist working with them individually, I can't possibly, in good conscience, say, go to your dad, or go to an adult, or go to this, because I can't assume that that's a safe place for them to go.
Wow. And so as adults, when we find ourselves in circumstances that feel as though the emotions are overpowering us, the circumstances are overpowering us, finding that safe space is also a good lesson and a good tip, I think, because we may not be aware we've placed ourselves in a situation where we're reacting, right? We're in the midst of the reacting, as opposed to going, wait, let me take a minute and just pull back from this and give myself some, as you said, some breathing room to assess why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And most of us don't allow ourselves the time to assess why we feel the way we feel. We just keep pushing forward.
Absolutely. Even, taking a break and going to the bathroom. And this can be, applied to fear, or it can even be applied to a relationship that's really, if you're having an intense, maybe an argument or debate or interaction with someone that you care about, it is really healthy to just take a deep breath and say, okay, well, this is getting really intense. Can we just take can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And
That's a good
not run
practice.
away. Not run away from the conversation, because there needs to be a resolution. But when it gets heated, it becomes so heated that then you can't even access the frontal part of your brain.
Sure.
And to take, like you said, okay, let me go take a break. Let me go to the bathroom, or let me go for a walk.
Well,
go
you spend
to a
so much
safe
time
place where
defending yourself and your position, or whatever it is that you think that you're being adamant about. And now you've lost the ability to be objective and to have open ears to hear the other person as well as yourself, right? I feel shut off. Sometimes I get into that space and I feel shut off from my own self. And I'm only left with these tiny little options, right? This small little window to see the world through, because I'm already in that state.
Right. And so then going to your safe place, is helpful, even as adults.
That's so helpful.
Even if it's as simple as, a really handsome guy approached me on the train, like, okay, well, maybe I just need to take a walk and come back and realize I'm being, having this going on. And then you redirect yourself. You're redirecting your brain.
So what are if there were 3 takeaways that the kids could take away and adults could take away from Gracie and the book? Well, sorry, that's the name of the book, which is
Braveheart Gracie and the Vacuum Monster.
Braveheart Gracie
and the Vacuum Monster. Yeah, the 3 takeaways.
Yes.
So the difference between rational fear and irrational fear, because it's not always a clear-cut line. It can be very confusing. And, because there's a part in the book where the animals are like, well, what about when I go to the vet? The vet is hurting me and it's really scary. It's like, well, getting a shot as a child is scary and it hurts. So not everything that's painful is a rational fear, is an irrational fear,
right.
Or a rational fear.
Right.
And I wanted kids to be aware and never lose sight of the fact of that spidey sense, because it's really easy to talk ourselves into, well, this is just an irrational fear. Like, for instance, you're in college, and as someone who doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, you're in college, and a group of kids invite you to go to this party, and you feel like something feels off. Well, no, they're popular, they're fun, everybody loves them, they're including me to go to this party.
Yep.
But you feel like this doesn't feel right to really pay attention to that, because then what happens? You go to the party and they put something in your drink, and who knows what happens to you.
Right.
So I really wanted them to not live a life being fearful, but to really, when the hair stands up on the back of your head, or when you feel like something is off, to really pay attention to that.
Don't you think we don't teach this self-preservation and instinct? In other words, trusting your gut. I feel like there's no class. There's nothing that we take that teaches us how to listen to that and discern the difference between a self-preservation set of instincts and responses versus an oversimplification or a rationalization of something that's taking place that should or could be fearful, right?
Right. Yep. And children who are sexually abused, this is like a perfect example. Like, okay, so everybody loves Uncle Tony. Everybody loves Uncle Tony. But I feel really uncomfortable with Uncle Tony. And so then the child talks themselves out of it. Well, Uncle Tony gives me presents. Uncle Tony gives me attention. I don't feel right around Uncle Tony. Well, now Uncle Tony's asking me to do this. But it must be okay because everybody loves Uncle Tony, right? So almost every child that has been sexually abused felt uncomfortable. But then, it was confusing.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And of course they didn't always have a grown-up to protect them, but I wanted them to always give validation to Uncle Tony makes me uncomfortable, and to voice that to somebody.
Right. how to voice it and feel okay to voice it, right?
And you could maybe exactly, and you may be completely wrong about Uncle Tony, but it's okay for you to feel uncomfortable with Uncle Tony, and it's okay as a child to say, I don't want to be alone with Uncle Tony.
Yes.
Uncle Tony's nice. Uncle Tony gives me presents, but I don't feel comfortable being alone with Uncle Tony. And as a child, to be able to say, I won't be alone with Uncle Tony. You know?
I think that's important because
we don't teach that.
We don't teach it to kids, but even as adults, we don't allow ourselves that messaging either. You know, when fear comes up in circumstances where we're uncomfortable with an individual and we just don't want to be there, we talk ourselves out of taking care of ourselves because we don't want to seem rude. We don't want to appear offensive. We don't want to, fill in the blank of all these different things, but we compromise our own integrity and value in these moments. And I think that's something that when I was looking at fear from an adult standpoint, especially in entrepreneurship, and these irrational fears we have set around trying to do, be, or have something different than we are today, I think a lot of it comes back to that place where it is integrity. And you build self-integrity by sticking by the things that matter to you. One is following through with your word on things that you're going to do. But two, when it comes time to honor yourself, right? And that's honoring your safety, that's honoring your mind, honoring your instincts. If we spend so much time dismissing them, we're chipping away at our own self-value and our own integrity. And then when it comes time to look at a potential future where we think, I can go do that, I can have that, I want to be that, we're immediately met with the answer or the message is, oh no, you're not worthy of this because you don't believe in yourself, or you don't value yourself enough to actually step into this light because here's all the reasons why. Here's all the things you've compromised over time. And those little tiny little things, those little steps, there's missteps in your self-integrity and self-worth, I think add up over time and eventually become that internal dialogue that happens as a result.
Absolutely. And there's so many adults that I work with that have a difficult time setting boundaries and saying no.
Oh, yes.
Like you do not have to go to dinner with that person just because they asked you. You do not have to be friends with this person just because they want to be your friend. If it does, how many times have you done something and you didn't want to, and you do it and you're like, oh, darn it, I didn't want to do this anyway.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say
and
no.
When you do, you're chipping away at your self-worth. You're literally telling yourself you're not worthy of your choice. Like it's the worst thing you could be doing.
I know your feelings are more important than what I want, and and we don't need to make
everyone
excuses.
Else is more important.
Yeah, exactly. And there needs to be no excuses. It could just be simply, thank you for the invitation. I'm unable to go. Period. You don't have to say why. I mean, you don't have to say, I don't really want to be your friend.
Oh, no. What we do is we spend an inordinate amount of time crafting a response that we feel will hide us from just saying no.
I know. I have to wash every single one of my hairs separately, individually, right? We come up with these ridiculous excuses.
Yeah.
Because we don't feel like it's okay to just say no.
So speaking of, these are the challenges everyone faces. What are the 3 biggest challenges that you currently think that you face? Is it a personal value challenge? Is it a professional challenge? Where are you on that?
Gosh, that could be so many
Or should you give
things.
me just one?
Give you just one. And actually this came up on my Neo, and you and I are the same on this, is I make decisions like that. Right? And I describe it as I'm jumping off the high dive in a beautiful dive. And as I'm nearing the water, I'm like, oops, I should have checked the depth of the water first, because I make decisions so fast. And now I don't miss on opportunities quite a bit, but I also make very quick decisions. And then oftentimes I don't regret what I do, but oftentimes then I'm left going, oh, I gotta, kind of problem solve this situation pretty fast. So I think that's one thing for me. Do you think
that's, so for those of us who, and I can't speak for everybody, but audience, I was an event producer for many years, and I lived in chaos. I lived in managing chaos. I thrive in that environment. So do you think that then, because we know that that's the case, because we know that we are quick decision makers and we do these things that a part of us is setting ourselves up in certain circumstances where we get to play that role, that we're choosing paths and walking down paths that place us in those more chaotic moments, because that's the skill set we have. Like, we've got all these tools, like we've got lots of knives and lots of screwdrivers, but I have no hammers and I have no, you know what I mean? Like, so you find ways to go, like, I need more screwdriver moments and more knife moments. Like, is that something that people do, you think, normally, or just?
I don't know. That's a good, and I don't know that my brain thinks that through, and I don't know if I'm as good as you at surviving in chaos. But maybe.
I don't know that I would say I'm good at it. I mean, because who wants
you
to
sink or
stay
swim,
there?
right?
It's sort of like, it's catch-22. I'm so good at chaos. Like, I don't want to be good at chaos. Actually, I'd rather not be in chaos, but I keep finding myself in circumstances where I build chaos. And so I left that industry because I wanted less chaos, you know, and I knew that about my life. In order to calm things down and bring my blood pressure down and have a better, healthy, more balanced version of life, I had to recognize it about myself, that I was putting myself in those scenarios. So I think it's very interesting that it's one of my challenges too, is to always make sure that I'm not gravitating towards the more chaotic choice. Like you said, when you jump and you realized I didn't check the water and how deep it is, I now start asking myself before the jump, you know, no, I still want to jump, but if I do, like, what are the things I might encounter after jumping? Like, I do prepare myself a little bit differently now, so I'm not putting myself in the middle of a situation that I don't want to be in.
Right. And I know for me, what I do is I find those people who I trust and who don't have a secret agenda, who can slow me down, you know, because some people don't always, you know, their own ideas get in the way, but there are certain people that, okay, this is how you are, that let's slow it down a little bit and think things through. And so I've got my couple of people that I go to, and they help slow me down.
Like a sounding board, or
like a
touchstone
sounding
person.
board.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I have that too in my life, where my dad is one of those individuals, and his wife, Julie, is one of those individuals. They're such calm. They're both scientists, so they're very pragmatic in that sense. So they want the facts and they want the pieces, and they'll ask for those up front. And I always know I'm in trouble, not with them, but I always know that I'm in trouble if I can't give them specific facts. If I'm bringing an issue to them and I don't have those answers, then I know you're not prepared to make the next step or the next choice, because you can't even give them these simple facts that should be laid out in front of you and very clear, so that you know how to take the next step. And if I'm jumping too far ahead, that means I've skipped past certain important facts and things like that. So that's very important.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. And what a great skill set it is. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have these facts.
Yeah. Well, to know that about myself, but it's, you need, it's what a good touchstone or a good sounding board will do for you.
Yeah, it will, right? Versus, you know, like, well, it just feels right. Let's just go for it. And if I don't do it right now, the opportunity will be gone.
My 20s.
I got to make the decision. Right? I got to make the decision this minute.
My 30s. 20 years of my life spent jumping off that diving board and not asking why. Like, wait, there's no water?
Oops.
Oops. Yeah, exactly. Did that a lot. So we're going to be running out of time soon, and I hate to cut us short, but I want to get to a couple of other things. Specific goals and milestones that you have for this year, 2023, which is only halfway over, a little more than halfway over. But do you have any specific goals or milestones? Especially with this book, I would imagine, but anything else?
I really want to get, because I've been overseas for 9 years. So I came back, and for a year, I feel like I've just been kind of transitioning, and I've got these 2 books out that I really want to get out into the world. And,
so tell us about the books real quick. Just give us the titles so we could tell the audience.
So the first book is called Hope is a Butterfly If You Don't Squish the Caterpillar.
Squish the Caterpillar. It's a book series.
Yeah. And really, everything in the book has meaning. So even the title, like I named Hope, the caterpillar, which is a butterfly, because hope, right? It signifies hope. And how often in life do we squish our own caterpillar before we allow ourselves to become a butterfly, right? Where sometimes we can be our worst enemy.
Yeah.
So there's layers to the book, and they're the same characters that go through and have these experiences. And the second book is Braveheart Gracie and the Vacuum Monster. So, promoting and all of that's a whole other skill set that I do not have, that I'm trying to learn, that I'm trying to develop. And if I could just write my stories, I'd be happy. But, writing stories and get them out into the world, right? Nobody's going to know about my stories if they,
Right. What good is it if people can't see it, can't hear about it? So, ladies and gentlemen, you got to spread the word for Gracie and the Vacuum Monster. Is that right, Gracie? And the Braveheart Gracie, and the Powerless Vacuum Monster.
Well, it was powerless, and we crossed out the word less, and then put powerful, cross out the full, and then put less, because she has a change of perspective as she learns a little bit more about her fear.
Great.
Braveheart Gracie and the Powerless Vacuum Monster.
Braveheart Gracie
don't squish
and
the caterpillar.
Powerless Vacuum Monster. And then Hope is a caterpillar, don't squish. No, Hope is a butterfly, don't caterpillar.
If you don't squish the caterpillar.
If you don't. Well, that's true, because if you do,
you don't squish it.
There goes Hope.
There's not going to be a butterfly.
Exactly.
Yeah, there goes Hope, right?
So, okay, we ask our guests when they come on this show to get vulnerable with us and to share their journeys and stuff. Is there anything particularly vulnerable about your fearless journey you'd like to share with us today, or perhaps something inspirational that you'd like to share with our listeners for their fearless journey? Any takeaways from your entire life around the world?
Oh gosh, you talk about vulnerability and all that, and of course I love Brene Brown, and being vulnerable is not easy, and for sure, for anybody. And I think it's the bravest thing you can do. And I think the biggest takeaway, and I'm still learning this, is to not limit ourselves. I battle with those self-limiting beliefs. I have a ritual every morning and every night to visualize what I want to come into my life. And it will creep up like, well, who do you think you are? Well, this is a silly dream. Oh, this will never happen, right? And so to just, when those voices come up, to just practice every day to quiet them. And it's a practice, because truly I believe each one of us can be, not always can be, our biggest barrier to greatness.
I think we can be both our greatest barrier to greatness and our biggest hero. And I think what we've lacked the practice in, we lack being the greatest hero in our own lives. We can be very practiced at self-limiting belief. We can be very practiced at telling ourselves we're not good enough. We can be very practiced at harming ourselves and sabotaging ourselves and misstepping, right? And over-judging and not being compassionate. But when do we practice the other side, which is being your biggest cheerleader and greatest hero in your own life and in your own activities?
Absolutely.
And that practice, I think, is an important lesson for all of us to remember. So thank you.
And that it's a daily thing. I think that there may be some people that just have it down, like, I am the greatest thing and I'm going to make this happen. Maybe there are, but I know for me, it's a daily thing of quieting the self-limiting beliefs and trying to amplify the positive self-talk.
I think it is a practice, and I think we need to practice the art of loving ourselves better every day so that we can maintain a sense of fearlessness on our journey. And to that end, any parting words for our guests today? Oh, where can they find you? Where can they find out more about Gracie and you?
Well, so the best place to find me is on my website, Cristal, Cristal, Cook.
Awesome.
And then everything's on there.
Well, thank you very much, Cristal, for being part of the Fearless Road.
But we didn't do your personality
We'll have to come
exam.
back and do it again, so we'll have to do another interview. Is that okay with you? If we do a... Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. More time with you.
And then I'm sure the audience is going to love to see this, because I haven't even seen the results yet, so we can share them with you live. Maybe we'll do like a little...
Well, they did not surprise me.
We'll do a follow-up video to this so we can share the results of my my test, the NEO test.
Bring out the straight jacket.
Did I take the red pill or the blue pill? So,
no, your personality exam was pretty similar to what I had predicted, so it's pretty fun.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Fearless Road. Here we are with Cristal Cook, sharing her life's journey and her fearless path with us today. And we thank you for your time and your attention. Please, whatever you do, stay fearless and love yourselves. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Fearless Road podcast. If you like what you heard, if you love what you see, would you mind liking and subscribing, following and clicking and sharing. Do all the things. That's what I say. I like to say, do all the things. Can you do all the things? Or just do one of the things? Maybe don't do all of them, just do one. That's fine, just do one. Share it with somebody you love. Share it with somebody who you think needs to hear these messages. Share it with somebody who's on their own fearless road and needs to be reminded of their greatness. That's all I ask. Yeah, share it with somebody. Okay, thanks. Bye.